Okay, I'm just trusting that there are people on the other end here watching. So I'm just going to stare right down the barrel here. These are super always awkward to start because there's nobody other than Ryan and I in a room right now. And hopefully you guys are going to stick with us. Anyways, my name's Albert, and welcome to the Experience Design for Nonprofits webinar series brought to you by Zoo. Uh, Quickly, I am the Director of Strategy at Zoo, and we have a wonderful panel today, and we're going to introduce them right away and hopefully have a good conversation where you guys can ask some questions. But before, I will just give you a quick rundown on why we're here, what we're going to talk about, and a little bit of what Zoo does. So let's go up into the screen. Oh, of course, if 18 monitors, you lose where you're at. Awesome. Okay, we noticed that we had signups from all over Canada, essentially, a lot of people in the nonprofit sector. So I thought it'd be a good time just to introduce Zoo, just so you kind of understand who are we and what do we do. This is us. We are a little boutique products and service design consultancy that focuses on digital solutions. That is a mouthful, but essentially what we are is what a web company from 1995 would have grown into. This is essentially the consultancy that we see today. We are a group of developers, designers, strategists that help organizations kind of navigate the whole digital transformation, building apps, helping them with branding, strategy, building mobile apps, mobile web. But this is just essentially a look through the office of who we are. We are located here in beautiful Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, for all of you across the country. But more importantly, this is the stuff that we do day to day. We essentially deploy, design, develop web, mobile, digital, anything digital right now, whether it's an internal application, whether it's intranets, whether it's a mega website for your organization. And this is the organizations that we end up working with day to day. But as you can see, most of the stuff is digital, but we only care about one thing. And I would say that's all about experience, whether it's customer experience, client experience, guest experience, volunteer experience. All of us look at it as just user experience. And for us, that's the only thing that really matters. And that's what our talk is going to be talking about today, because our business was set up to essentially consult on user experience, whether it's web, whether it's offline. And the reason is because the internet was, we all remember how it was back in the day, right? It's obviously grown to something like this, where we are well on our way to changing how society is. And because of that, what we're seeing is that behavior is changing and the experience is changing. And so what we're doing is are taking some digital processes and techniques and applying them to just generic business. And that's why we're showing how it kind of can flex to the nonprofit sector as well. The approach that we take to solve a lot of the design problems that we have is really just design thinking. And for people who don't know what that is, it's human-centered design, and it's just a framework for the way you approach a project. Quite simply, if you're not familiar with it, it's just a practical approach to finding creative solutions to problems inspired by traditional design methods that you don't have to be a designer to use or understand. Again, another mouthful, but we like to just use design thinking as an approach to problem solving and a way to actually do human-centered design. If you look at the process, it's really, really simple. It's basic. It's classroom material. It's basically empathizing and doing some research at the beginning, understanding who your users are, then defining what their needs are. What are their actual problems? Then getting together with a cross-functional set of people to decide what should those solutions be? What should we prototype? And then how do we test it? And how do we do that fast? And so we're trying to introduce this to like all our clients and people who want to learn more about it. You guys are probably wondering, wow, that's a really awesome process. How do I learn about something like that? Well, good news for you. We also have spun up the Zoo Academy during COVID, which we've been teaching clients for a long time. But the Zoo Academy is a center for training, which takes our consultants off from the field and actually applies it and teaches our learnings to you. So we definitely have courses coming up where they are currently remote, but we usually do them in person in this room, the experience room. We have a 4-hour design thinking fundamentals course, which is March 25th. And we have two other courses. They're actually one course, but you can actually choose the 3-day or a 5-day on May 17th to 19th or May 17th to 21st, where the intensive is a lot more hands-on. We go through a 3-day case study teaching all about personas, journey mapping, how to truly design and prototype around your user. And then the 5-day one has an additional 2 days on more of a really structured way to attack it through this thing called the design sprint, born out of Google. It's this methodology that really allows you to design and prototype and iterate within 1 week. So with that, that is just the shameless plug. Just want to set that up as a foundation for our discussions today. And it's really important because all 3 of these panelists have different relationships with Zoo, while we have Kim from Big Brothers, who went through our training, but then we also have Alice Kuipers, who actually we built an application with her. But then Tammy, who runs the Ronald McDonald House, actually has 0 experience with us. And so it's really interesting to kind of get everybody's take on their experience and how they go about designing them. So let's meet our panelists. Let's meet our first one. And her name is Kim Megyesi. She's the executive director of Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Welcome, Kim. Hopefully I can see you.
Hi there.
How's it going, Kim?
Hi there. Thanks, Albert. Going great. Hi there, as Albert said.
Yeah. So Kim, why don't you give us a little explanation on the Big Brothers organization, your job, and like a little bit about the Big Brothers that we might not know.
For sure. So Kim Megyesi, I'm the executive director of Big Brothers Big Sisters in Saskatoon, sitting here in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis. And I've been with the organization for several years. And as you know, a lot of you have heard of Big Brothers Big Sisters. We have high brand recognition. But one of the things that I wanted to start off with today is just a little bit about one of our problems that we're trying to solve for right now. So what you may not know is that male identified youth wait about 4 times longer than female or non-binary identified youth. So shameless plug right off the bat. One of the ways in which we solve that problem is we get more males coming into the organization. So if you know a male identified adult that is between the ages of 18 and 118, that likes to do stuff in the community, just everyday things, send them our way, because we'd love to have a chat with them about how they can get involved with the organization and become a mentor.
Awesome. Hey, we're all about shameless plugs today, so go nuts. Okay, next up on our panel is the Ronald McDonald House of Saskatoon CEO, the CEO with a heart, I like to call her, Tammy Forrester. Welcome, Tammy.
Hi.
So, Tammy, why don't you give us a little background on what we don't know about the Ronald McDonald House?
Well, I've been with the Ronald McDonald House for just about 9 years now. And what I find actually, what most people say is, wow, I've driven by the house so many times. I've just never been in. I don't know what it's like inside. Never had the reason to go in, which is always a good thing. But the Ronald McDonald House is 34 rooms of support for families that they can access while they have traveled to Saskatoon for the medical care of their child. So they may be traveling from anywhere around the province to have support from the JPCH or from other centers here in Saskatoon and need a place to stay. Ronald McDonald houses have always kind of been known as a place where we support families going through this journey at a reduced rate. So for $10 a night, they can stay. That's kind of the sidebar message, I think, that we want to share out with people. It has an impact on Saskatchewan families and really families around the globe. We are a global organization, so we are in countries all over the world. You will find Ronald McDonald houses. We have a wonderful network of support, which is great to rely on when you're thinking about designing new experiences and efficiencies within the house. We have definitely organizations we can lean on. One of the things that we've leaned on, one of the organizations we've leaned on is RBC. So this is kind of an interesting fact, I think, that nobody would really know about the Ronald McDonald House Charities organization in Saskatchewan. But RBC did an economic study for all chapters across Canada to find out what the economic impact is for families that are traveling for the medical care of their child and what a Ronald McDonald House can save a family. So when we looked at Saskatchewan, for the year of 2019 alone, it was found that a family that stayed at a Ronald McDonald house here in Saskatoon or accessed our family room program, we saved $2 million of out-of-pocket expenses for families. So once they get here, they pay $10 a night, but then they also don't have to worry about food provisions. They don't have to worry about parking. They don't have to worry about laundry services. There's so many more amenities that they receive once they are in the house or accessing the family room in Prince Albert. And it's a pretty significant savings for Saskatchewan.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And last but not least, we have author extraordinaire, world-renowned, founder of One Small Step Alliance, Alice Kuipers. Welcome, Alice. Why don't you give us a little bit about yourself and what this One Small Step is all about?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on the panel. I love talking to Kim, and I'm loving getting to know Tammy better too through this. It's really interesting to me to hear about Ronald McDonald House because it's the first place I volunteered when I first moved to Saskatchewan 17 years ago. And I love the house and I love the feel, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about where Ronald McDonald House is now. And with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, my partner Jan was supposed to do the bar event that they do, which had to be cancelled because of COVID. But I was the lucky recipient of many COVID-19 cocktails that he was taught to create through the barman over at Congress. So I'm looking forward to when Big Brothers and Big Sisters can have that event again, and I can enjoy those with other people. We set up One Small Step here in Saskatoon. Me and Greg Bamford, who's a realtor here in town, and the executive director of Sanctum Care Group, Caitlin Roberts, because when I met Greg, it was doing the Sanctum Survivor Challenge, and that challenge asked us to live as if we were homeless for 36 hours here in Saskatoon. We did that challenge with my son, Theo, who was 8 years old at the time, and we were asked to shed ourselves of our regular lives just to try to glimpse what it might be like to as if we were homeless for that period of time. And what became really apparent to both me and to Greg was that the only way really to get through the days is the extraordinary work of the nonprofit sector here in Saskatoon and across the country. The people and the organizations provide such an invaluable support for the vulnerable sector. And we knew after we'd done the challenge that we really wanted people to know about this work and also to know about the real-time daily needs of those nonprofits so people could support them. We worked with you guys over at Zoo, and you came on as partners, which made a huge difference to what we were able to do with One Small Step. We're able to have all of the nonprofits on the website for free because of our partners and our sponsors, Affinity Credit Union and Blue Cross and DCG Philanthropic and the University of Saskatchewan and Nutrien. And what we're able to do now is when people ask that question, where can I donate? How can I help? How can I be a volunteer, and where can I do that? That answer is there. We have 26 nonprofits on the site so far, and we're increasing that number every few days.
Awesome. Well, with that, I'm going to stop screen sharing and escape out of here so we can actually just have a good discussion. So for the next half an hour, all I want to do is just talk about innovation, user experience, and how it applies to the nonprofit sector. And hopefully the people who are listening in can actually think about their experience and how they go about actually designing their experiences. So the first question I really want to ask the panel here is really just, when you think about just experience, which is kind of funny of a word, like what is the core experiences that your organization delivers? And like, what are you in the business of when you think about that? So maybe I'll start it up and talk to Tammy and just give us an understanding of like, what is the Ronald McDonald experience?
I think for our families and for our organization, it's really keeping families close. So enabling them to be a family in a home-like environment in a time where they are experiencing nothing but stress and uncertainty. Our job, our opportunity is to give them the experience that they have arrived home and they will be taken care of and cared for while they are trying to take care of their child in the hospital or receiving treatment.
Okay, so that's the core experience for you guys. What about Kim?
So our main priority is that we are able to offer mentors to young people facing adversities. So if you think about the, the parties that are involved in that and the users that we would define through that, it would be the volunteers, the youth, the young people, and their families. So many of us can relate to an experience where we had a mentor in our life, and we think about that and all the positive vibes that brings, and how we feel about that experience. But if you've had the opportunity to be a mentor, you also know that there's a number of things and things that you gain through that experience as well. So when we think about our users and our user experience, we have to be very intentional about thinking about those three groups: the volunteer, mentor, what they're going to get out of the experience, and what does that look like for them, the young person, and then the impact on family. And so we really have three main users that we always have to be constantly thinking about. What does their experience look like, and how do they travel through our organization, and ensure that it's a positive outcome for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really kind of interesting that you mentioned a bunch of different types of user, because I think in the nonprofit sector, you do have various audience and stakeholders. You have the clients or members, then you have volunteers, then you have donors, then you have employees as well, right? So every one of those groups has an experience that can be related back to the brand. So Alice, it's interesting that, this is why I like the panel, because every nonprofit is slightly different. Where Tammy, you really have a lot of experience in the house where you could watch it, and like a lot of the experience is actually happening within a certain setting. While Kim, you have a small experience with the bigs and the littles, but they largely have an experience with each other further away, so you're not totally in tune or basically able to see and observe what's happening. And then Alice, you're even further from everything, because this is a website that you're creating for people to access all the time, where you're not seeing many experiences unfold in front of your eyes. But what would you say the overall experience you're trying to aim to deliver with one small?
When Greg and I started working on One Small Step, we didn't know what was needed, but we knew there was a gap. We knew that when people typed in, how can I help, or I want to donate, or I have this thing I want to give away, there wasn't an answer coming up. There was no digital strategy for the nonprofit sector here in Saskatoon, or anywhere really. We searched as much as we could all over the world, which is pretty easy, Googling and looking to see what type of connection points there are for people to contact charities. And then when we started working with you guys over at Zoo, we started basically asking a lot of questions and getting a lot of insight from people in the nonprofit sector, from people in the Indigenous community, from people who understood the tech world far better than we did, to see if this was going to be helpful, to see how it was going to be helpful, to see what they needed. And what became clear was that the nonprofit sector has to deal with an awful lot on a day-to-day basis. You're dealing with everything from clients, like you say, to donors, to being able to navigate through grant systems, to dealing with somebody suddenly appearing in your office who's really upset about something, dealing with employees. And all of those fires make it difficult for the connection with potential new donors, or that stewardship with original donors too. And what we wanted to do was make that easier. Laurie O'Connor over at the Food Bank and Learning Centre here in Saskatoon describes a philosophy of abundance. People who want to give do want to give, they want to support, they believe it's the right thing to do. And so do we. And we wanted to make it so that if somebody has that impulse to search for a nonprofit, or to search for a way they can be supportive or generous or give, maybe they read a story about somebody who's suffering here in Saskatoon and they want to remember the name of the organization, but they can't. We wanted it to be really easy for people to connect. So we did a donor survey too. We asked donors how they donated and how they connected with organizations. And again, we found that they tended to go to the ones that they already had heard of, because they either had worked there or they knew somebody who'd used those services. But often that drive-by feeling of, I wonder what Ronald McDonald House does. Well, if you remember the name, that's great. But if you don't, you can find it over on One Small Step and easily look up. But we're just getting Ronald McDonald House on over the next week, actually, where a page is created. But you can see what the programs are, what the philosophy of the organizations are. And then you head off of our site. We don't take money on our site. We just direct you. We're a connecting hub. so that nonprofits can say, we really need underwear, or we really need greens. And then you go off and you build that relationship outside. I like the story of a local hotel group who've been looking for years where to find a place to donate their gently used linens. Hotels apparently like to replace their linens, which makes sense. But the ones they get rid of are far nicer than anything I probably have in my house. And they want to give them somewhere where they're going to be used. So they've built a relationship through one small step with Sanctum Care Group. Sanctum runs several transitional homes for people who are homeless with HIV or at risk of HIV. One is for women with children, with babies who are pregnant or who are just given birth. And through that, now they have nice sheets, and Sanctum has a nice relationship that will continue with this hotel group that never was there before. So that type of relationship, even though we're not directly there, we want to make that connection so that that generous impulse can go somewhere.
Awesome. That's news to me that we don't take money from the site. So we're going to talk about that.
No, yeah, we move you straight over to, so if you go to Big Brothers Big Sisters page and it says how to donate, it takes you over to Big Brothers Big Sisters Canada Helps page. We don't take money. We're sponsored by our sponsors and by the partnership with Zoo, and that's why it's free for everybody to be on the site. But we don't want people to come to our site and give us money. We want people to give you guys money, the nonprofits that we're trying to help. There's a question actually that just came up about corporate donations. It's for anybody to get to know any organization. In fact, that's one of the reasons Blue Cross were pretty excited, because they said that this is something they've been wanting, to be able to see the different organizations easily, to see what they're doing so that they can know, okay, this is where we want to support. I didn't even know this one was here. This would fit really well with our values.
Excellent. Okay, let's pull the curtain back a bit on your organizations. And obviously everybody knows kind of the front end experience. Like, how do you guys go about creating those premium experiences? How do you go about, like, do you have systems in place? Do you have any sort of process? Tammy, let's start with you, because I'm really curious about, because I don't know too much about how you guys go about delivering all these amazing experiences.
I think for us, it starts when the families walk through the door. We looked at our front end greeting, hosting systems, I guess, a while ago, a number of years ago, and that first impression that families get when they come through the door of the house is so important. So hiring and training volunteers at that guest experience reception area to make families feel like they have just stepped into their home. It's not, it's not a hotel. It's not sort of a come in and not be a part of what's going on. So that really is important. And our family service associates play a big part of that. Welcoming opportunity for families to feel like they've arrived at home. Then I think throughout their stay, they are invited to treat the house like their home. There's lots of different spaces for families to be a family in. There's living room spaces. They can watch movies together. There's a playroom downstairs. They can ride trikes down the ramp. They can play floor hockey. They can go to the media games room during their stay and watch movies together, or play pinball machines. It sort of is a variety of activities throughout the house that are designated for families to feel like there is something to do for them to do together. There's a multi-purpose room where they can play board games or do puzzles. But I think the most important part of a family's stay is what happens in the dining room and around our food services program. So that's been a very deliberate creation of something that will serve families, not just from they need to be fed, and we need to ensure that our families do not go hungry. They need to go to the hospital having had a warm breakfast in the morning, and they need to come back from the hospital with a home cooked meal ready for them when they arrive home. So the food programs is really important, but what happens around the dining room tables is even more important. And that's where our staff, the volunteers that we have, they create the experience for families to connect to one another, to connect to someone at the house, to tell their story to cry with, to laugh with. There's lots of emotions that happen here at Ronald McDonald House, and that's what we're about. We're not afraid of that. So how do you create sort of that experience for families to feel like they can just let go because they've arrived home? It is sort of deliberate planning in our programming. So that really the food programs is kind of the number one thing for families. And we all know the kitchen is the heart of the home. So we've kind of deliberately planned it out to be that for families.
Awesome. And Kim, obviously you've just gone through the week with Zoo Intensive. I'm really curious to see what you guys were doing before, and like how are you looking at experience going forward in the future?
Yeah, so if you think about just the user experience, let's take the mentor experience, for example, and there's a whole pipeline from when we recruit a mentor to how they come out on the other end in an alumni program or as a donor, and then how they build a relationship with a mentee in order that that relationship has the outcomes that we're looking for. You know, like I gave an example earlier, we all had a mentor in our life. We know that there's a huge impact and how much it can impact a young person's life and how it can really change their life, and then and as a result change communities. So a lot of times what we do is we look at the mentor experience in all the different touch points that they have with their organization. But I think one of the greatest learnings from the training that we went through is to really define that pipeline as more fluid. And from when we start to recruit a mentor, and how do they move through that pipeline through to the other end, and what are all the things that we're trying to accomplish while they're there. And so we've started to map that out. And then I think what's critical for us is when we think about long-term sustainability as for our organization, we need to think about what are the areas in which we can improve along the pipeline to ensure that we're accomplishing the goals that we need to, but then also in a really financially sustainable way. And so we looked at each of those segments and we said, okay, what are the things in which we can automate to streamline? And then what are the things that are really critical and important that we still maintain a human element? And so that our professional casework team can focus on those things. So in the match segment of that pipeline, what we ultimately want to do is create outcomes for young people. And so the relationship is critical and super important. And so how do we then support that behind the scenes to ensure that they're building a developmental relationship, because that's where we're going to have the greatest impact. And as you mentioned, Albert, so much of the relationship is out in community, and they're getting together and kind of hanging out on their own, but that's supported in the back end by a professional casework team. And that team, we need to make sure that we're setting the mentors up for success, and that they're able to support the youth in those relationships and through training and support and mental health support for both mentors and mentees. And so there's a number of things that we need to do as mentors and mentees move through that pipeline. So it's really looking at both the human element, but then the automated side, and how do we marry those two together to accomplish the greatest outcomes for young people.
Yeah, as you can see, it just looks like you guys are just matching, bigs to littles, but there's so much more to think about, and it's such a deeper discussion around relationships. So that's really neat to see. Alice, let's pull back the curtain. Obviously, we worked quite a bit just to get this thing off the ground and launched, and it was probably more work than you anticipated. But maybe just talk about the two sides that you had to deliver service for, which are the donors, the public, and then also the organizations that want to be on. Like, it's a constant struggle or constant project for you to onboard new employees and new projects and new organizations. So maybe just talk about those two organizations or those two stakeholders.
Well, one of the things we found was that the onboarding process, how do we bring a new organization onto the website, was too complicated, and it was giving organizations a unpleasant first experience with One Small Step. They were getting an email that was like, and then you fill in your page, and then you set your page up, and then you do all of this stuff, and you watch this video and jump through a few hoops and do a couple of front flips, and then voila, your page is done. And so it wasn't working very well. And we really need organizations to find this super easy, because it is easy once they're on. And so actually just a couple of weeks ago, after trying multiple different solutions and options and rewriting the communication, which you think I might be good at as an author, but it was actually extremely challenging to write this communication well, and Zoo were helping trying to write the communication. What we decided to do instead was create a Google form where organizations fill all their information in, I put it on, and then their page is uploaded. And so we created that form on Friday. 2 organizations have filled it in already. So now this morning I could put up Elizabeth Fry and the Saskatoon Council on Aging, and their page is live, it's launched. Now all they have to do is just update their needs. So every week, every couple of weeks, we're trying all the time to make One Small Step easier and more fluid for nonprofit organizations so that they just update it. And that also requires people to be visiting the site. So we soft launched November 24th, and I think around 7,000 people have been to the site so far, which, considering we haven't really done much of the, this is One Small Step, we'd like you to come here, this is what we're trying to do, because we're working on building the number of organizations that are on there. We're pretty pleased with how popular it's been so far. And we've also had people writing to us from all over Canada saying, why don't we have this? This would be such a great thing to have. I've had to learn with some of Greg's coaching to just take it one step at a time and not try to do everything all at once. But we are finding that people are enjoying using the site, that we're getting really positive feedback. We had several families through Christmas wrote to just say, me and the kids have spent some time on the site. We've chosen where our money and our donation is going to go. We didn't even know about this organization. We're so excited to go and drop off a donation, or to send them a check, or to build a monthly donor relation, which can be really helpful for organizations. I'm fundraising chair over at Haven Family Connections, which used to be Saskatoon Crisis Nursery. Now we call it Haven Kids House. And what we see is you know, we say we want toys, and people will come and they'll bring toys. We say, okay, that's enough toys when we post on One Small Step. So it's nice to see that relationship building. But for the nonprofits, our job really is to make that consistent and to have people coming to the site. So for anyone who runs a nonprofit here, we've actually been really lucky to start working with Ripen, which is spelled super weird, R-I-I-P-E-N. But any organization like ours, like One Small Step, can post a project on there and find an intern anywhere in Canada. And if you get authorized as a level up Ripen employer, which is now what we are, those interns are paid by the government. So I have now 3 students, and soon I will have 6 students who are working to do things like website UX, UI, Google Analytics, digital content creation, social media strategy, things that as an author and as a mom of like 4 plus 2 more children, I don't have all the time in the world to be able to do. Sort of trying to run a nonprofit, it's a lot of work. So I'm pretty happy with this Ripen connection. So if anyone wants to ask me more about that, I can certainly kind of point you in the right direction.
Yeah, we'll be putting that in chat.
Yeah, for people to have a look at. It's been really good. It's been a terrific link up for me.
We were talking a lot about magic moments. You talk about it a lot in training, and the idea that, you know, with Uber, they didn't disrupt the entire ride sharing world. They didn't change the way the cars are delivered. It's essentially the magic moment they focused on was that 15 seconds before and that 15 seconds after. And they said, we're going to design those to be amazing, where you don't have to wait, and you can book everything on your phone, and you can just walk out of the cab without talking to anybody. Those are the 2 most important things that they wanted to design for. And I'm just wondering with magic moments, quickly, if I go through each organization, what are your magic moments, meaning the moments that actually matter that you're really trying to design better? Tammy, you kind of mentioned it earlier, but like in terms of magic moments, like what comes to your mind when you think this is what we have to nail?
2 things come to mind. One is the moment they walk in that front door. I've often said that the house is magical. For anyone that stepped foot in this house or had taken a tour, there is something that exists here. I felt it when I first took my tour in 1993, before I had any connection to this this house or this organization. So the moment that family steps in the house, they need to feel that magic. And that comes with hiring the right people, having the volunteers that care, really welcoming them in a way that they feel like they have arrived at home. And the second magic moment is the tour. So spending some time with family service associates and any volunteers that are going to take the family on their first tour of the house. We have to get that right. We have to nail that. We have to show them all of the wonderful ways we are here to support them while they are on this journey that is all over the map and can be very stressful. So those are the two that I would say are vital here at Ronald McDonald House.
Perfect. And so for you, the user in that aspect are the guests. So like those are the highest priority out of all the stakeholders we talked about is giving that a premium experience to the guests. That's good.
Yeah.
Kim, how about you?
Yeah, so I was like, wow, that's really, it's hard to narrow it down, but like Tammy, I picked two areas I want to talk about. And one of them is with the volunteer. The user is the volunteer mentor. And I think it's in their enrollment process, and more specifically, as soon as they hit send on that volunteer application, because I think there's probably that moment of, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've just signed up I have to change a child's life. And what does that mean? And so I think it's really critical that our first response to them is, okay, we got you. You can do this. We got you. We're going to support you in this. So I think that's really critical right there after they hit send on that application. And then the other one is when, and this is more on for both, but for the mentee experience, I think is when that first match meeting, when our coordinator goes and introduces the mentor to the mentee, and that really sets the pace for their relationship. And I think it's critical that we get it right and we get everybody off on the right foot at the very beginning.
Awesome. And Alice, on One Small Steps, it's obviously a little bit different. How do you look at a potential magic moment in the journey?
I just keep that line from Laurie O'Connor in my mind all the time, this philosophy of abundance. It really sticks with me. And so what we want is when people have that generous impulse, that it's super easy for them to be able to find the work of nonprofits, to understand the issues, to see what they're doing. And that makes it very easy to do everything we're doing, because I see so much happening in the nonprofit sector, and I just want everybody here in Saskatoon to be able to easily find access to that information so they can build impulse. I think COVID has taught a lot of us how important it is that everyone in our society is well served, and I know the work that's happening here in Saskatoon is crucial, and I want everybody to be able to find that really easily.
Right on. Now that we're just talking about users, I do want to do one audience poll right now. So yeah, we're going to do a Zoom audience poll right now. And it's we're going to talk about service delivery in your own industry. Hopefully everybody's kind of thought about what their magic moment is. But I want to ask the question, when it comes to delivery of our products and services and experiences, which of the following statements is true that, oh, wrong one. Thanks, Ryan. This one, how about this? When it comes to this, which one is true? We have a clear understanding of our users and their needs, but are not executing on it. And we have a clear understanding of our users and the needs and their needs and are executing on it. And the last one is we don't have a clear understanding of our users and their needs. So really interested to see like where everybody is for understanding how to design around their users. It looks like the votes are coming in, or people are changing them. Interesting. All right. Okay, it looks like we're about 32% of people feel that they have a clear understanding of their users' needs, but aren't executing on it. But the winner right now is that people feel like they have a clear understanding of their users and are executing on it, which is great news. And 19% think that they don't have a clear understanding of their users' needs at all. So that's kind of representative of the poll we usually do in these sort of things. So that's good. We'll do one more poll before the end. I always like seeing these things. So let's talk about something that it's unavoidable to talk about, which is the pandemic. Because, you know, when you talk about experiences, you talk about innovation, COVID has obviously affected every type of organization. I think it's really important to kind of go through you guys and understand how it's affected your organization, how you've been able to adapt. So, you know, Tammy, maybe just talk a little bit about the pandemic and how it's affected Ronald McDonald's House and how you were able to adapt, or opportunities that have arose.
Yeah, I think early on we were informed by the global organization that all houses and family rooms across the world would need to not intake any more families. So for us, that meant we had 21 families at the house at the time, and we couldn't take any more in until we kind of got the okay to do that, which changed and we had to also send all of our volunteers home. And that really impacts the house. They are part of our HR strategy. They are part of the team. They deliver on family experience, just like we do as staff. So to lose all your volunteers kind of in one fell swoop hit us pretty hard. They are essential to the work we do. So, you know, staff were definitely stepping in to take on different roles that maybe didn't fall into their job description, but were closely connected. And we started looking at, you know, ways that we could take what we have as capacity and resources here at the house and see if there were ways that we could support the community now that we were supporting fewer and fewer families. So once families checked out, we couldn't actually have families check in until we were given the green light to go ahead and do that. So actually towards the end of May, we were down to 3 families at the house. So we just looked at our resources and capacity, and knowing that I wanted to keep the team solid and strong and together for those that didn't need to go home and work from home. And knowing, and I think this is kind of some of the sidebar things that were happening with COVID in the community, hospitals had to decrease their service offerings. So, you know, food services closed for people, but they wanted to keep families with the patient at the hospital. So there were lots of sort of logistical things that were kind of happening around us. And I think then this led to an opportunity, and it was an opportunity for us to utilize our staff and what they were keen on still serving families and the mission that we have. But looking at what the needs were at the hospital, we started a lunch program. And so we worked with the partners at JPCH and quickly found a way that we could feed the families. So we had the kitchens, we had the food programs to do it. We had wonderful resources from donors that have supported the families in the past that stepped forward and started supporting the lunch program. And so kind of these communities all collided, and we started a lunch program. So 3 days a week, we could deliver lunches to all the families at the JPCH that wanted to and needed to eat while they were there. So this included local Saskatoon families. This included a couple of our families, even though the numbers were starting to decrease a bit. And we started with sort of 46 lunches every other day. So we've served actually to date just about 6,000 lunches at the JPCH for families there. And it's actually, there was a comment in the chat line here of someone local, I think, that maybe used the lunch program during this time as well. And I think we got responses from people that said, this actually saved our life. We will never look at a sandwich or a juice box or a piece of fruit the same ever again, because it arrived without sort of needing to go out and try and find food for those moments during sort of the intense COVID restrictions that we all felt in the first 6 to 8 months. So the wonderful thing is that the food program continues, and things have changed at the hospital and different restrictions have lifted, but we've got this great partnership with JPCH, and we can support the families and we can support the medical system. We are all a part of family-centered care, and this is the part that we play. And it's been a really wonderful opportunity. So a great outcome of this whole pandemic.
Oh, that's a great story too. The idea that innovation came out from this, and it also showed organizations working together, which I think was really important during the pandemic, right?
Yeah. We had to be partners, all of us.
Everybody had to band together, which is great.
Yeah.
I saw it on the commercials all the time. Kim, how about Big Brothers? Did you guys and Big Sisters, did you guys end up finding some opportunities or being forced to innovate?
Yeah, for sure. So, we're in the relationship business. So right off the bat, there were implications to relationship when people can't connect face to face. That caused some, challenges for us to think differently about how we connect and how we support people to connect. So more specifically in our school-based program, because that was the one that was impacted the most, our community-based matches could still see each other in public places that were still open, or being able to go see each other outside, but still distanced. And so, there's been various levels of that, but they've had the opportunity to still be able to see each other. So the greatest impact was to our school-based program, because when the school shut down, we were like, okay, how are we going to ensure that some of our most vulnerable youth now are absent of the way in which they connected with their mentor, and that was through the school. And so how are we going to make sure that we keep that connection alive? And so our coordinator team went to work right away on ensuring that they were still able to reach out to schools, make sure that we were tracking youth so that they could connect from home, and that our coordinators could support that. But then we really quickly started talking with the school division. We've got a great partnership with them, especially around the community schools and some of the most vulnerable kids around. When they came back to school this fall, what was that going to look like? The implications to that time of being apart and being in social isolation. So how can we ensure that they know that they have the consistency of their mentor and that relationship is going to be protected? And then also, how can we help alleviate the school in some of their challenges that they were going to be facing in the fall around mental health concerns? And how were the teachers and the school going to address that? And one of the ways to address that, one of the interventions there is a mentor. So we were able to get up and running a virtual mentoring platform that our mentors and mentees are able to connect on virtually. And because, yeah, as you know, even in the fall, our mentors were not able to go into the schools, but we wanted to make sure that we had a presence. And so we have a virtual mentoring platform where our mentors and mentees can connect virtually with the support and safety of our coordinators, and the platform itself has a number of safety measures built into it so that we can assure safety for both the youth and the mentor. So one of the neat things that came out of that we weren't expecting was because the school-based program, the mentors only see their youth only on school property, and that's all their relationship is ever been is in the school setting, which is great because it allows us to really reach some of the most vulnerable youth that we can reach in the school setting. Because the relationship is only at school and on school grounds, sometimes they just don't have that glimpse into each other's personal life in the same way that a community-based match would. So one of the things that came out of connecting through the virtual platform and over the summer and then into the fall was some of the youth were connecting with their mentors from home. And so even though we want to protect youth and be really careful that some aren't super comfortable in that virtual space. So that's another challenge that we solve for. But one of the things that did happen is they now got to see their mentor and their mentee in a different way that they never had before. So for example, we have a match that has been going for 8 years. I think that they've been matched through a school-based match. So they've only ever seen each other on the school property. And so they were able to connect. And when the mentee came on screen for the first time, she was at home and her mentor saw her in her room. She had all her walls were plastered with all the artwork that they had done together over the last 8 years together. Oh, and wow. So that was it was a super touching moment for the mentor to have that validation of how much she had meant to her mentee that she just wouldn't have had if they had only seen each other in school all the time. She knew that she was important to her, but that was just I think it just really hit her hard how important and how impactful that relationship is. And so that's just one story of how virtual mentoring has impacted our organization and could into the future, because it'll allow us access to youth in a different way that we had before. We have corporate partners, and so if you think about, you know, somebody that might be mentoring from a workplace, for example, you know, Albert, if some of your zoo colleagues were matched in a mentoring relationship and in those in-school mentoring match, then you wouldn't even have to leave your workplace to be able to mentor a youth at school that needs it the most. And so there's definitely some positive benefits that have come out of us exploring what virtual mentoring could look like.
So you're saying it's now never been easier to be a mentor?
Yeah, exactly. You got it.
No excuses. This is the problem I have. This is the problem I have working with the nonprofit and charity sector, is that, you know, you always make me rethink working at this for-profit capitalistic sort of money-hungry machine we call it. Ali, I'm going to give you one chance to kind of wrap it up and talk about really how COVID's kind of affected you guys, because obviously you were launching this during the whole pandemic.
I was so frustrated that we didn't have it already ready and already done March 12th, because I could see that the vulnerable sector was going to be badly impacted, and it has been. But I'm glad that we have been able to launch. But I've also been super impressed with the Saskatoon interagency response and the incredible work that's happened there, so that people have been able to easily support the work of the nonprofit sector here. And now I'm happy that One Small Step is slowly growing, so that it's there for those changing COVID needs that each organization has. The needs and the capacity of the organizations changes all the time. We're able to share that on our social media, we're able to share that on the site. And I'm really glad that we began this process, and that we did it right, and we did it slowly, and we did it carefully, even though I was frustrated that it wasn't ready when the pandemic hit. I'm happy that we've made something that is clear and easy to use and is going to do the work that we want it to do.
Doing it right was important, because I hear that we're getting calls from different places going, why don't we have this in our city? So I think that was the ultimate goal, is being able to do this. So
I think for the nonprofit sector, they just don't want to be taking on something that's going to waste your time. Like, that's just not helpful. So it really had to work well. And that, like I say, the generous impulse, it has to be met. Like, if you have that generous impulse and then suddenly your kids are taking over your day, or you have to get to work, or a Zoom meeting starts or whatever, then it's gone, right? But with One Small Step, it makes it easier for you to just follow that through.
You know what, when you look at the time, it's already 1 o'clock. Where does the time go when you're having a great conversation? I want to thank you guys. It was an honor to have you guys on our panel, just to sharing your stories and make me feel guilty for working where I'm working. And but I want to just say, keep doing what you guys are doing. And thanks, Kim, for even talking about the training. If everybody is interested in learning more about human-centered design and how it can apply to the nonprofit sector, definitely, we're going to put a link in there for all these different grants that can almost pretty much pay for the entire cost of the program. So it's still available in Saskatchewan. We have that Reopen Saskatchewan grant that makes it possible for everybody in Saskatchewan, if you're working for an organization, to take the course. And we have noticed that there are other people in different provinces. So we did our snooping to make it so there's no excuse to join up. But Kim, Tammy, Alice, do you have any closing statements?
Well, this has just been a wonderful opportunity to talk and to hear what's going on with Kim and Alice's work that they're doing. I'm truly inspired. It's just been a great way to spend an hour. And the hour we spent earlier last week, that was fabulous. So thank you for the opportunity.
No problem.
Yeah, just thank you as well. And one of the things I want to, kind of springboard off of what Ali said, and just how much COVID has helped us realize how the urgency of working together and how partnerships are so critical and important. And I think COVID's actually made it a little bit easier for us to overcome the barriers in doing that. And then just the extreme generosity of our community, and how much we've noticed just since COVID, the outpouring of support that we've had as a charity, and it's cross-sectoral, right? People really thinking about how they can give back, I think, has been noticed.
Awesome. And Ali, close it out.
No pressure. Well, thank you everyone for coming, who's been listening today, and reach out to us over at One Small Step or any of these guys if you have further questions, I think. And thank you, Albert, for inviting us, and also for all the work that Zoo did as our partner to get One Small Step to where it is. It wouldn't be where it is if we hadn't had the insight from the nonprofit sector. All the time, everybody who's put time into One Small Step, it's as much yours as it is ours. And so we're really excited by where it's going. Thanks.
We're just happy to be a part of it. So thank you, Ronald McDonald, host. Thank you, Big Brothers. And thank you, Ali at One Small Step. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see each other soon. Okay, take it easy, you guys.